Hey there, deep divers. Get ready, because we're doing something a little different today.
Good.
Yeah. We're taking a deep dive into a 1987 German action comedy called Peng, bist,
Huh?
which translates to Blam, you're dead.
Catchy.
And it's about a rogue game developer who becomes an assassin, and he's got this super chip that can control, like, everything.
Sounds wild, like something out of a cheesy 80s movie.
Right. But it's actually way more relevant now than you might think.
You think so? I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it's not just some mindless action flick. It actually taps into these anxieties we have about technology, anxieties that were just starting to emerge back then.
Yeah, that's true. And now those anxieties are like front page news.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, imagine this, a German action comedy set in this almost like stylized version of Germany, not quite Silicon Valley, you know?
Interesting. How so?
Well, they've got these fictional license plates with V on them.
Huh?
And they filmed it on location in Berlin and Munich. It's got this really unique visual vibe.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. So it's got this kind of retro-futuristic aesthetic.
That's a great way to put it. And get this, the director Adolf Winkelmann was known for his really gritty, realistic films like Die Abwehr and J.D. Mensch Cole.
Oh, wow, really? Those are about as far from tech thrillers as you can get.
Right. So for him to make this kind of movie, it was a real departure for him.
It makes you wonder what sparked that creative shift.
Seriously. It's like he could sense what was coming down the line. I mean, think about it. 1987, most people were just wrapping their heads around home computers.
Yeah, and cell phones were practically bricks back then, if you even had one.
Exactly. And here's this film diving headfirst into the dark side of technology.
It's all about the timing, isn't it? This was right at the dawn of the personal computer revolution, but before the internet as we know it.
And before cybersecurity was even a thing people really worried about.
Exactly. That's what makes this film so fascinating. It was ahead of its time, imagining how technology could be weaponized on a huge scale.
It's like they had a crystal ball or something.
Right. It makes you realize that even the most out there stories can say something really profound about the world.
And about where we're headed.
Exactly.
It's like they bottled up the feeling of those early days of the digital age, that sense of both limitless potential and lurking danger, and poured it into this action comedy.
You've hit the nail on the head. And they explore those themes through some truly memorable characters and scenarios.
All right, so let's get into it. Who are the major players in this tech thriller turned comedic chaos?
At the heart of the film, you have Herbert Wilhelm Peters, the antagonist. He stumbles upon this super chip. And let me tell you, this isn't some vintage game cartridge. This chip gives him control over anything electronic. Medical equipment, industrial machinery. Imagine a world where a single line of code could have terrifying real-world consequences.
And that's not just theoretical, right? There's that scene, the one in the hospital, where a patient dies during surgery because of what appears to be a computer error. It sends chills down your spine. You're left wondering, what else can this chip do?
It's a brilliant way to raise the stakes. And that's where our protagonists come in. Kai, the computer whiz who feels ripped from the pages of an 80s hacker magazine, and Andrea, an American teacher who gets caught in this digital dragnet. They're an unlikely duo, each tackling this threat with their own unique skills. Kai with his technical prowess, and Andrea with her sharp intuition, making for a captivating dynamic.
Speaking of captivating, the filmmakers strike this incredible balance between suspense and humor. Like that scene where Kai is practically playing cat and mouse with Peters through the streets of Munich, trying to stay one step ahead. It's thrilling, but there's this underlying dark humor that keeps you on the edge of your seat.
It's that genre bending that allows the film to tackle these weighty themes without feeling like a lecture. It's entertaining and thought-provoking all at once.
Okay, so we've got this super chip wreaking havoc. But it's not just about the technology, is it? It's about the people behind it, the potential for things to go very wrong very quickly. That's a fear that's been around for ages, right? The idea of losing control to something more powerful than ourselves.
Precisely. And what makes Peng die best so fascinating is that it captures this fear at a pivotal moment in history. Think about what was happening in the 1980s. Computers were becoming more integrated into our lives, and with that came a growing awareness of both their potential and their dangers.
And let's not forget, this was also the era of the Chernobyl disaster, an event that really brought home the terrifying consequences of technology gone wrong.
It's like the film taps into this collective anxiety about technology that was bubbling beneath the surface in the 80s. And looking back from 2024, it's remarkable how much they got right.
It's almost like they had a crystal ball, right? I mean, they couldn't have predicted the specifics of our digital world today, but they nailed the anxieties, the what ifs that keep us up at night.
Absolutely. Take the idea of a single point of failure, the potential for one weak link to bring down an entire system. It's a concern that's more relevant today than ever before.
You're right, and we're not just talking about a super chip anymore. Think about our power grids, our financial systems, our global communication networks. These are all incredibly complex systems that rely on intricate connections. And as we've seen with things like ransomware attacks and cyber warfare, the more interconnected we become, the more vulnerable we are.
Exactly. And that's what makes Peng do as taught.
Sure.
So much more than just an action comedy. It's a cautionary tale for the digital age, disguised as a wildly entertaining film.
So while the idea of a single super chip controlling everything might seem a little far-fetched, the anxieties it preys on are incredibly relevant, wouldn't you say? It's like they took those whispers of unease about where technology was headed and turned them up to 11, creating this exaggerated, almost absurd scenario. But that's the beauty of satire, isn't it? It can make us confront uncomfortable truths by wrapping them in a package of entertainment.
Exactly. And by exaggerating those fears, Peng, bist forces us to ask ourselves, what if? What if our reliance on technology made us vulnerable in ways we hadn't even imagined?
So while we might not have a rogue game developer running around with a super chip, the core message of the film, that our interconnected world comes with its own set of unique vulnerabilities, feels more relevant than ever, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it's not just about malicious actors or cyber attacks. It's about the unintended consequences of our own creations, the ways in which complex systems can behave in unpredictable, even dangerous ways.
It makes you think, doesn't it? If a film released in 1987 can still speak to our anxieties about technology in 2024, what does that say about our relationship with the digital world? Are we in control, or are we just along for the ride?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think Peng, Dubis reminds us that there are no easy answers. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
It's up to us to decide how we want to shape that future. And maybe, just maybe, films like this can help us navigate those choices a little more thoughtfully. Well, deep divers, we've gone from a seemingly lighthearted action comedy to some pretty deep reflections on technology, control, and the future. I'd say this deep dive has been a wild ride.
I completely agree. It's amazing how a film released decades ago can still offer such profound insights into our world today.
It just goes to show that sometimes the most unexpected sources can spark the most thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, deep divers, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep an eye out for those hidden gems that make you see the world in a whole new light.